Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mopariola. It is now that time of the day when typical nightlife in Africa often feature clear skies in the city, cars homeward bound on busy highways, and a group of friends stuck in the bar down the street, probably debating survival and hardship over a few bottles of beer. Well, following months of economic downturn, Africa's two biggest economies have recently slipped out of recession at the same time for the first time in modern history. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the latest economic developments that have seen Nigeria and South Africa come out of recession? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
The Nigerian economy grew by 0.5% year-on-year in the second quarter of 2017. This shows it has recovered from recession after a persistent decline for 5 consecutive quarters.
We're not out of the woods yet. The recovery is obviously very fragile, and we need to make sure that all the players are playing their part for this to be sustainable and for that growth to translate to poverty reduction and also to employment.
The latest growth seen is higher than that of the same quarter in 2016. This saw aggregate gross domestic product rise higher by 14.6% year-on-year. Economic watchers say the country should build on this development for the growth to be felt in real terms by the people.
Diversification. This is an opportunity because you have a robust plan for diversification. You have what I called macroeconomic policy convergence.
What we allow harvesting of crops, what we allow production in agri, in terms of irrigation and all those kind of things, have to be put in place. What we allow factories not to close down in terms of sustainability of a very good exchange policy and monetary policy have to be put in place. Once the real sector of the economy, that's the productive sector of the economy, are doing fine, then we are not going back to recession.
The Nigerian government is advised to intensify efforts at making its economic recovery and growth plan succeed, as it plays a critical role in advancing growth.
There are 6 pillars and 60 policy action areas. You need to have performance indicators. They should publish the performance indicators. And 2, the National Planning Commission should go on the fast lane with stakeholders and start monitoring and evaluation.
The Nigerian economy entered into recession in 2016. Data from the Statistics Bureau indicates the manufacturing, oil, trade and agriculture sectors helped in putting the economy back on a path of positive growth. The International Monetary Fund had earlier predicted the country would exit recession this year.
Well, according to figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's GDP expanded by 0.55% in the second quarter of 2017, year-on-year, and in 5 consecutive quarters of contraction. South Africa is still facing big economic challenges despite recording a more healthy 2.5% growth figure, with unemployment still high at nearly 28%. Joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Victor Ohai, policy analyst and media consultant. And on phone, I have Dr. Sherif Alabi, economist and a consultant with the Africa Development Bank, joining me from the United Kingdom. Good to have you both on the program.
Thank you.
Well, let me begin with you, Victor. Now, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, economic recovery in Nigeria was driven by improved performance on agriculture, manufacturing, trade sectors. Now, with all this being said, how does this translate to the masses?
Well, obviously, it will take a while for it to trickle down to the masses, if I may use that language. What we have right now, performance indicators or indices that, show that obviously there's a GDP growth, and that obviously points to an upward rise, that takes us out of the recession. But if you ask the ordinary man in the street, obviously this sounds strange because if you like, the commodities are in the market right now, are things that were probably, if you like, imported a couple of months back at higher prices and all of that. So it will take a while. Obviously, by quarter one of 2018 or towards the end of this year, we might begin to see, if we do not relapse, we might begin to see the effect of the improvement in the economy, you know, as it were. But in the immediate, you're definitely not going to see that. But you see, even although we're talking about moving out of recession and all that, for it to translate to begin, we need to begin to see things like employment. We need to begin to see businesses beginning to grow and expand, you know, in the real sector as well. And then only then can you begin to see, you know, some, you know, improvement, you know, in the lives of the ordinary person on the street. Yes.
All right, now, Dr. Sharif, Nigeria and South Africa recently limped out of recession, but there are still economic challenges. How long do you think it will take before the people begin to feel this impact?
Good evening, sir. I have to agree with Victor on the very last point he's just made, actually, that despite this, and his early days yet to begin to celebrate, although it's a welcome development indeed, and one must congratulate the government of Nigeria and the team behind getting this sort of result for us. But it will probably not make any immediate impact on real livelihoods in the communities, in households. I would suspect that it will look to probably the first to the beginning of the second quarter of next year before we begin to see a real change in terms of local prices. And this will probably only come, I have to say, if we implement a deliberate, continuous and sustained coordinated effort of some sort towards maintaining what has been achieved, but also growing that. And that means also supporting development in the real sector, especially within the SME and probably the even very small of that business segment. So the next 6 months, 7 months, I suspect, will be when we're likely to see real change.
Earlier on, the federal government of Nigeria admitted that the 0.55% growth recorded is fragile and vulnerable. What do you think made them to utter such statement? Is it something that we shouldn't care about?
No, we should certainly care about it. It's any growth, any positive growth is better than zero growth or negative growth for that matter. But I think the message is that, as I just said, probably not to start jumping on the bandwagon of the jamboree trailer and singing and dancing down the street. But yes, it is good, but I think the message is we must continue to do what we're doing to make sure that we got to this point, to make sure that we actually grow beyond that. It's way beyond the initial growth forecast for Nigeria and indeed South Africa and many other African countries as far as GDP is concerned. We came down from, I suspect, from 4.7% down to nearly 1.8. So it's now coming very positively, and yes, it's taken out of that recession point. But there is a danger as well. I think there's similar experience in Britain here, for example, when post-2015, when we thought we'd come out of recession, and suddenly we went straight back into it in the second quarter. So we're then talking of the double recession and almost a regression of side growth. We don't want that to happen. So the efforts of the government, I think, in Nigeria is exactly doing what they have done, and if there's anything that's new that they can add to that to sustain the effort, to make it deliberate and to hopefully prolong it. And I think, in essence, investing in other real sector infrastructure and facilities and services that will actually promote growth in other sectors of the economy beyond macroeconomics. Let's look at the micro-level economics and seeing how this is supporting local businesses and small businesses and making sure that they're beginning to develop and produce both for local consumption, so reduce our dependency on imported goods, which we still do currently. We're also making sure that those products as well as are both of quality standards and also provide the right situation to promote health generally in the economy. I think that is the message they're saying, that we are not out of the woods, and yes, it's good. We can see a bit of clear light at the end of the tunnel, but we want to make sure that light actually goes brighter and further.
Indeed, we're not yet out of the woods, but we need to hold your thoughts for now. We need to go on a quick break. You're watching Africa Today, and we've been looking at the latest economic developments that have seen Nigeria and South Africa out of recession. Welcome back. While South Africa is coming out of its second recession in 8 years, latest economic developments in Nigeria marks the end of its worst recession in 25 years. Both economies boast of a combined GDP of nearly $800 billion and a population of about 200. While South Africa is coming out of its second recession in 8 years, latest economic developments in Nigeria marks the end of its worst recession in 25 years. Both economies boast of a combined GDP of nearly $800 billion and a population of about 230 million people. Now, Victor, before we went on break, Dr. Sharif gave us this note that we're not yet out of the woods. It is something that we should, apply with caution, even though it is something to cheer about. But there are concerns that this cattle herders clash, farmers and cattle herders clash in the north, Boko Haram militancy as well in the north, separatist agitation in the southeast, all in Nigeria, could affect this growth or this fragile growth we have recorded in our economy. Do you think that we can sustain this economic growth, so to speak?
Well, you're forgetting a very important one. There's a threat by the Niger Delta militants that might begin to blow up pipelines again by September 10. All of these obviously are threatening to, if you like, make nonsense of this fragile gain, if you like, that have been made in recent times. Obviously, you can't talk about economics in isolation of politics. You need the right environment for economics to, for the economy to grow. If you don't have the right political atmosphere, foreign direct investments, and all sorts of, if you like, economic growth, both within and from without, will obviously not be present. So stability is critical, So going forward, I think it is very important that the managers, particularly of the Nigerian economy, since we're talking about that, need to be able to sort of balance, the politics with the economy. Sometimes you need to trade off certain things in order to be able to get other things. With the herdsmen and some of the other clashes we're having with the separatist movements in the southeast, the clash with the herdsmen in the north, the threat by the Niger Delta militants. We need negotiators. We need people who will be able to, we need wisdom as a government, as a people, to be able to manage these. And we saw a lot of that while the former acting president was in charge. A lot of credit will go to him for, if you like, the shuttle diplomacy, if you might call that, within the country, you know. But the movements he made, going into the creeks of the Niger Delta to talk to these militants, and after the discussions, they laid down their arms, you know. The discussions he's been having with the various groups, or that he had with the various groups, to a very large extent helped, because there was a bit of stability. And under an atmosphere like that, the economy is bound to thrive. No investor will come into a country where there's uncertainty. You're talking about kidnapping, talking about, you know, militancy and all of that. I mean, it's not going to show up. Only arms dealers would be interested in an economy like that. So, but we've had a bit of stability, and you know, the oil price as well has been a bit stable and has risen at least above the benchmark for our budget and all that in recent times. It helped to a very large extent. What can threaten that is militancy in the Niger Delta. Now, we must not allow that. Not allowing that is not by strong arm tactics, it's still by negotiation. Every war will end on the negotiation table. So we may as well begin, and which is the method that the acting president used, and I'm hoping that they will continue, or that he can be trusted to continue with such negotiations, you know. Another thing that may threaten us again, the economy again, we're having strikes, you know. Doctors have just gone on strike,
and then
the university, the lecturers are going on strike, and when you begin to have trade union strikes and all of that, it's obviously going to, you know, yes, it would. So that's why it's still fragile. It's still early days yet. It's not yet uhuru, if you like. What we must do is manage these little gains in the best way possible, balance the politics with the economy, so that we can take it to the next level.
All right, Dr. Sharif, with the points raised by Victor Hai, what areas do you think the Nigerian government should prioritize, if you like, to ensure that this growth recorded can be sustained?
Well, now it's a tall order slightly, but I think if we were to create a very quick short list, I think the first priority must be certainly on keeping the eye on the ball, making sure we don't lose sight of how we got to the point that we just arrived at in terms of coming out of the recession, and to continue, as I said, sustaining that effort, and even more so in a strongly coordinated way. And yes, Victor is quite right. You cannot divorce economic management and national policy from politics, and whether that is politics at national or local or levels. So all those other areas where any slight activity may derail the growth that we're recording, we need to look at that very carefully. And yes, if diplomacy is the best way to approach it, let's come to the negotiating table and talk, whether we're talking about the insurgencies from different parts of the country and to the unfortunate organized union activities in terms of the medical profession or the teaching profession. Let's look at where the grievances are. Let's look at the argument from both sides of the table and see what we can reasonably come to agreeing, at least for one thing, with the national interest being uppermost. And whatever we do, it must be for the benefits of society at large and for the future of the country. This is not about the people who are there now. They must understand that the dividends that we are reaping now were actually of the seed that were planted by many people before that time, before then. And what we're doing now is actually to support the future, and what is the future of the young people in the country who we hope will be developed and geared up to taking over the baton to run the country. The priority should be to focus on the growth, to sustain it, to invest in the risk sector, and I think again I make the point that's very crucial for the small businesses in particular to get everybody productively and economically engaged. That they're actually not only looking after themselves, but hopefully we'll be able to coming back to contribute to something back to the national coffers, which can be used to further create jobs and employment and supporting other sectors, whether we're talking about energy and power and water and health and sanitation, is all linked together. And we cannot be doing one thing in isolation or allowing sectors to operate in silos. So it must be coordinated, it must be joined up, and there must be responsible and credible, I suppose, parties or authorities in charge to make sure this is working for the benefit of everybody, including the economic management team of the country.
All right. But from all that you've said now, what are the economic indicators that would show that the economy is fully out of recession?
Well, let's see what effect it has on the price of bread in the market. Let's see what effect it has on the price of transportation of goods from one part of the country to another, whether you're talking about the direct cost of vehicle management or road network repairs. Let's see how it impacts on the health improvements, the health sector improvement, which is badly needed for everyone. And let's see certainly how even the education sector might be elevated to provide the sort of skills we need. And we're not just talking education here or the academic curriculum, but the skills that will be necessary to sustain what we already have and to grow the future of the economy. If we're beginning to see price changes and price movements which are positive and impacting directly on livelihoods, yes, those would be, for me, the primary indicators to say this is actually working fantastically.
All right, quickly before I let you go, Dr. Sharif, what are the economic speculations for both Nigeria and South Africa?
I hate to try to compare Nigeria with South Africa. I think my South African friends will shoot me ready to see me the next time. But I would say we are probably now back on par because at one point Nigeria was the greatest, the biggest. Then suddenly we took our eyes off the ball. South Africa took over. And again, with poor policy management and implementation, they went back the other way. The future is bright for both countries, I believe. I think the right team is just in place to get both countries back on track to go into where they're supposed to. So if this is maintained and without the political interest that may be sometimes selfish, and because one party thinks that they do the job better than the other, and yet that may be the case. But I think if they came into the fold with the right interest and with the right motivation, there's no reason why both countries cannot maintain their growth and attraction.
All right, thanks a lot, Dr. Sharif Alabi, economist and a consultant with the Africa Development Bank, all the way from the United Kingdom. Thanks a lot for your analysis on the program.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, indeed, according to him, the future is bright for both countries, South Africa and Nigeria. But let's look at what these recession have. That's the effects of this recession on the continent at large. What are your thoughts, the effects of this recession?
Well, I'd like to look at the positive side, if you like. It was a wake-up signal. It was a rude shock, especially to two of the largest economies on the continent, Nigeria and South Africa.
Yeah.
It just tells you that no one is too big, and you cannot afford to relax or rest on your oars. It was a rude shock. So I think to that extent it was good because all the governments now decided to
wake up.
It was a wake-up call, and for smaller economies, they could see that okay, if it can happen to these economies, then obviously they are also as vulnerable. But on the other hand, obviously, like all recessions, let me just say, I like to look at a positive side because honestly and truly, I think it has also brought out innovation in a lot of
economic policies.
Yes, innovative economic policies, innovation among the citizens as well. You know, because it made many people start looking inwards. In Nigeria, for instance, we started appreciating made in Nigeria goods. We started looking for, even for, if you like, import substitution. We started looking at what else can we use locally here. You know, so there's lots of positives.
So it became a blessing rather than a curse,
as
it initially came out to be
yes,
in the first place.
I honestly don't see it as a curse. Yes, fine. Of course, the recession, which means a little less money, and but it also means a little less money to steal, if you like, for the bureaucrats. I'm sorry to say. You know what I mean?
All right, yeah, I got you very clearly.
Exactly. So, But by and large, it's made us more creative. So I think it's positive. It didn't last forever, and I hope it doesn't last longer anyway. So,
Sure it doesn't.
Yeah, but even if it does, I think it will bring out the best in us.
Yeah, and I'd like to end on that positive note. Thanks a lot, Victor Ohai, media consultant. I appreciate your analysis on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, with issues like corruption, policy lapses and abuse of public office urgently waiting to be addressed, recent economic developments in Nigeria and South Africa are quite commendable, but shouldn't become another reason for complacency. Until coming out of recession translates into meaningful improvement in the lives of the people, bright prospects would continue to be marred by slow recovery, and statistics would fail to match reality. And that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation as usual on Twitter at TVC News NG. And also follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Mokwariola. And always remember, change starts with you.